Okay guys, so this is the first lesson in a series of videos where I'm going to be breaking down all the punches, the jab, the cross, lead hook to the body, rear hook to the body, lead uppercut, rear uppercut, and the overhand. So let's get right into it, guys. First things first, we're going to cover your stance. So when you're squared up with your opponent, we're going to be in what's called a heel-toe stance, meaning that if there were a line coming from your opponent to you, one foot would have one toe on the line and the other foot would have the heel on the line. This isn't the most strictest concept, right? You can be a little bit more squared, right, or a little bit more parallel, but once you start to become too parallel, right, it can be a problem. It takes away from power, right? You're not able to defend calf kicks. If you're too squared, right, your midsection is exposed. You can't throw a cross as effectively. And so when you're squared up with your opponent, if you're in a parallel stance, when you're throwing your jab, some of the power that's coming from your jab is coming from this rotational force that you generate with your torso. And so when you're squared up and your shoulders are already parallel to your opponent, you just don't have the range of motion to put rotational force into the punch. And so your jab is less effective. The lead hook is not really an option for you to throw because, again, you just don't have the range of motion. You're just not in position to throw it. It doesn't feel comfortable. The cross, right, straight cross, it feels like it's too far away. You're going to have to reach. It might cause you to overcommit, and so this could be a problem. Long story short, you're going to want to stay away from this positioning where your feet are parallel to your opponent, okay? And then, like I said, if you're too squared, right, your cross is not as an effective of a punch, right? And so also your midsection is more exposed and you can't move in and out as good, right? You can move side to side because of the way your feet are positioned, but you can't engage and disengage as efficiently as if you're in this heel-toe stance, right? So you kind of want to find the middle ground, and this heel-toe stance is where you're going to want to be at. Next thing that's really important is your base, okay? And when I say base, I mean the amount of space between your feet, right? This is what it means to have a strong base. If you look at a plyometric box, for example, right, you're going to jump on the box. It needs to have stability. That's why the base is wider than the top portion. And so when it comes to your base, right, your stance, the way that you're standing, if you don't have space between your feet, then you don't have that stability. And so your feet need to be a little bit wider than your shoulders, okay? And so also, the reason why this is important is because when you're moving around, right, if you don't have space between your feet, you can't move around efficiently. You can't move around at a moment's notice, right? It's not until you get your base that you can move, right? That's why in baseball, right, when an infielder is lining up, he knows he's going to have to react to the ball getting hit. He lines up like this with his knees bent, space between his feet, so that wherever the ball gets hit, he can react accordingly at a moment's notice. And so when you're fighting, you're always reacting to everything that's going on in the fight, gauging distance with your opponent. And so you need to have the space between your feet so you can move when you need to move. Another reason why it's important is because when you're throwing your strikes, right, your jab or your cross, whatever it may be, you're building up a kinetic chain of energy that starts from the ground. And so it starts in your feet and travels up through your whole body. Your whole body is working together. It's like your jab, for example, is not just an arm punch. It starts from the ground, and if you don't have space between your feet, you can't push off the ground. You can't generate force. So these are all reasons why you need to have a solid base, meaning space between your feet, a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. You're going to want to have your knees bent as well, just enough to where it's comfortable. If you're too bent, you're kind of tensed up and you're locked up. If they're too straight, obviously you can't push off the ground, right? So again, here we are, nice and comfortable, knees a little bit bent, and in your hips, there's going to be this slight hinge, right? So you don't want to have your hips straight, right? Your hips should have this little hinge to it That's what's going to allow you to move around, strike, and do everything that you need to do. The next thing that I want to talk about is your shoulder positioning and trajectory. So as we're in this heel-toe stance, right, as we have a solid base, right, now we're getting into the shoulder positioning. And what I mean by that is the way that your shoulders are positioned in relation to your opponent. So they should be at about a 45 degree, right, compared to your opponent. And as you jab, right, your shoulders are going to be going from 45 degrees to straight on. So we're helping generate some rotational force as we throw our punch. So I'll demonstrate. Here I am, heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degree. It's going from 45 to straight as I jab. Okay? And so next thing that I want to talk about is the shoulder trajectory. Okay? So you're going to be on a slight uphill trajectory, meaning that your lead shoulder is higher than your rear shoulder. Just slightly. Okay? I'll show you what it looks like from the side. Okay? So here I am, right? In my stance, heel-toe, wide base, 45 degrees, and slight uphill. As you can see, I'm not flat, right? So your shoulder is going to be on a slight uphill trajectory. And this is how it is in a lot of sports as well. Let's say baseball, for example, when the batter is lining up to hit the ball, back shoulder is dropped, right? As he goes to hit. If he's throwing the ball, right, the pitcher, back shoulder is dropped, right? Golfer, same thing. Back shoulder is dropped. Someone throwing a football, back shoulder is dropped. So when you're squared up, right, your back shoulder is dropped. And as you throw your jab, right, the jab is a special punch. It's not like all the other punches. You should be able to maintain this slight uphill trajectory if you choose to do so. Okay? So as you throw your jab, you can maintain this uphill trajectory, or you could use that, the fact that you're kind of loaded up this way, to help generate downward force, more power into your jab. For example, if you're throwing a jab to the body, right? Here I am, slight uphill trajectory. As I throw my jab to the body, I'm coming down. Does that make sense? I'm coming down. That's helping generate force behind the punch. As you throw your jab, you can maintain the slight uphill trajectory, or you could use downward force to kind of help generate power. So again, guys, here we are in our heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees and on the slight uphill. As you jab, you're going from 45 degrees to straight, okay, to straight. And I'll demonstrate again. So now we're going to break down how you step into your jab. So we're going to be stepping and punching. Now you're going to twist and step simultaneously. So as you step, right, you're twisting, okay? As you step with both feet, you're twisting, okay? Now when you're squared up to your opponent, your feet, right, your toes are going to be pointed towards your opponent, okay? Now as you step into your punch, you want to make sure that you maintain your positioning, right? The heel-toe stance. And so a mistake that a lot of people make is that when they go to step into their punch, right, my toes are pointed towards my opponent, I'm in my heel-toe. When they go to step, they step here, right? So as you can see now, I'm not in my heel-toe stance. My feet are more parallel, and this can be a problem, right, for all the reasons I explained earlier. So again, the mistake that you want to avoid is stepping out of position when you step into your jab, which looks like this. Okay? And so as you step, right, let's say you're stepping forward into your jab, you need to bring your foot straight forward. Okay? So my hips and my shoulders, right, are generating force, twisting this way as I step, but my foot is going straight. So foot is going straight as my shoulders and my hips kind of rotate this way. So you got to be aware of this, right? I'll show you what it looks like. So as you can see, once I reset, I'm still in my heel-toe stance. Okay, here I am again. So as you can see, I'm twisting as I step, and I'm still in my heel-toe stance once I reset. sometimes people step straight and they're still in position, but they forget to kind of twist. So they'll step forward like this, right? As you can see, I step forward, I'm still in position, but I didn't really put any power into my jab. I didn't use this rotational force to twist, right? And so you want to avoid that mistake. You want to make sure that your punch is effective as possible. And so as you step forward, you want to twist. The other way that people make this mistake is that instead of bringing their front foot across, right, like this, right, what they do is their back foot will slide out. So it'll kind of look like this, right? And then when they land, right, now I'm obviously not in position. Again, what people will do is their back foot will slide this way, boom. Happens so quick, guys, and it can be a real problem in the fight, so you want to avoid this mistake. The main point here is that you want to step into your punch as you twist, and you want to use rotational power, but you don't want to put yourself out of position. Now I want to get into the hand placement and trajectory of the punch. Then we'll get back into the footwork aspect later. So first things first is that as you're in your heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees on a slight uphill trajectory, your hands are going to be placed just below your eyes, right? Right here around your cheekbones, and your elbows are going to be tucked right here, shielding your body, right? And if your hands are too low, right, think about it. It's more distance that your hand has to travel in order to reach the target, right? If your target is your opponent's face, it has to travel all the way from down here to here, right? Versus if your hands are already up, the jab can be a lot more efficient. And so at the same time, if your hands are too high, right, now my midsection is exposed and it takes away power from my punch, right, because I'm not able to use my shoulder as well. And so again, you don't want to have your hands too low, you don't want to have them too high. Right here, nice and comfortable, around your cheekbone area is where you want to be, right? You can efficiently block punches as well, right? You can block the body, right? So that's another reason why you want to have your elbows tucked. You don't want to have your elbows flared up like this, right? Leaving your midsection exposed. Again, guys, heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees on a slight uphill, hands right here under your cheekbones, and elbows tucked. We're working on the foundational jab here, which is a straight punch. And so as you throw your jab, you want to make sure that it's going straight from point A to point B, right? As efficient as possible, right? In a straight line. And so as you're in your heel-toe stance, wide base, I'm stepping into my punch, I'm twisting, my punch is coming straight, okay? And when I reset, I should still be in position. Now, as we step into our punch, we want to make sure that our punch is coming nice and straight with our elbow tucked and we're turning it over, okay? And so, again, heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees on the slight uphill, hands right here under your cheekbones, elbows tucked. As I'm stepping and twisting into my punch, my fist is coming straight from point A to point B as my elbow stays tucked, right? It doesn't flare up. And I'm turning my fist over, okay? Okay, so that's one mistake that people make is they forget to turn their fist over, right? And not only can this reduce power output, right? So it looks like this, right? They're kind of just sticking their arm out. It can reduce your power output, right? Because by incorporating that, turning your fist over, it can help produce some more power. So you're losing power, and it can kind of cause you to not have your chin protected behind your shoulder. And so that's another reason why you want to throw your punch nice and straight, is that your chin, if you do it the right way, will be protected behind your shoulder, right? As you throw your jab, right, as you can see, my chin is right here under my shoulder. Again, guys, our hand trajectory is coming nice and straight. And so, like I said, the fastest that something is going to travel is from point A to point B. And so you don't want to reroute the punch and make it inefficient. You're already loaded up. You're already in position to throw a powerful jab. And so what people will do is they'll do an extra little windup before they throw their jab. So it'll look like this. Right? And so as you can see, instead of just releasing the jab, I did like an extra little load up, which slowed my punch down and telegraphed it to my opponent. So ultimately it's going to lessen your chances of landing the jab. So you don't want to do an extra little load up as you throw your jab, right? You want it to be nice and efficient. You're already loaded up, come nice and straight to your opponent. Now, the other mistake that people make is instead of keeping their elbow tucked, right, the elbow will kind of flare up, right, as they throw their jab, right, their lead elbow. And so as you extend your jab, right, if your elbow is flaring up, you need to realize that your punch at that point is coming in at a different trajectory. And so as I extend my arm, as you can see, if my elbow is flaring up, it doesn't come in as straight. Okay, now when you're squared up with your opponent and they have their guard here, right, there's a small opening that can be split, but only if you throw the punch nice and straight. As you lift your elbow up, the punch doesn't come in at the same angle, and it has a higher chance of running into their hand, into their guard. And so when you keep your elbow nice and straight, it increases your chance of splitting their guard. And so that's another reason why you want to throw it nice and straight. The other mistake that people will make is their rear elbow will flare up. So it looks like that as they throw their jab. Again, it looks like this, right? So you want to avoid that mistake as well. There's no reason to flare that elbow up. Make sure that you keep your body protected, right? No reason to leave it exposed. Again, guys, as a review, here we are in our heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees on the slight uphill, hands right here under our cheekbones, elbow tucked. As we twist and step into our punch, we want to make sure that we're going to land back in our position, but we're throwing our punch nice and straight, right? Keeping our elbow tucked and turning our fist over. Again, we want to avoid the mistake of flaring our elbows up. We want to avoid the mistake of doing little micro movements that are going to slow our punch down and telegraph it to our opponent. Guys, your opponent can process horizontal movement faster than they can process movement coming in and out. And so these little micro movements to the side, right, their brain can process it faster. They can see it coming, and it's going to cause them to react. Versus if you just throw it nice and straight, you're really going to increase your chances of landing that jab, guys. Not only does it increase your chances of landing the jab, but it also protects your chin behind the jab. And as you can see, it partially hides my right hand, okay? Because we're not just throwing a jab a lot of the time. We're going to want to follow up with the right hand or with some other sort of punch. And so it's important that we throw it nice and straight. Again, not just so that we increase our chances of landing it, but so that we keep our defense tight and we set up our next shot. Now let's get back into the footwork aspect of things. So the jab is a special punch. You should be able to jab while stepping in any direction. And whichever direction you step in as you jab, that foot should be going first. So if I'm stepping to the left, I should be jabbing as my left foot steps first. If I'm stepping to the right, I should be jabbing as my right foot steps. Okay? If I'm stepping forward, I should be jabbing as my front foot steps. Right, backwards as my back foot steps, I'm jabbing. And so again, I know you guys love to hear it. A quick review: heel-toe stance, wide base, shoulders at 45 degrees on the slight uphill, hands right here under my cheekbones, elbows tucked. As I'm stepping into my jab, I'm twisting. So as you step, you're twisting, throwing my punch nice and straight, turning my fist over, and I should land in position no matter which direction I step in. So if I'm going forward, I'm still in position, okay? If I'm going backwards, as I step backwards, I'm twisting, okay? As I step, I twist, and then when I reset, I should still be in position. If I'm going to the right, as I step, I punch and twist, and then when I reset, I'm still in position. If I'm going to the left, as I step, I twist, and then when I reset, I'm in my positioning. A critical point to realize here is that however much distance you step with one foot, you have to step relatively the same with the other foot, or else by default you're going to lose your stance or your base. And typically the mistake that people make is the second foot that steps takes a bigger step than the first. And I'll demonstrate what I mean by that. Let's say I'm coming forward, right? I'm taking a step 3 or 4 inches, 5 inches with my front foot, but my back foot wants to take a bigger step, so it looks like this, right? As you can see, I don't have a solid base anymore, and so I'll show you what it looks like from the side, right? So as you can see, just this here, I don't have the same stability as I do if I have, like I said, my solid base. And so that's something that you're going to want to maintain is a solid base, right? So you can't let that second foot take a bigger step, right? Let's say I'm going backwards. The second step is going to want to take a bigger step. So you have to be conscious of that, be aware of it, and don't make it a bad habit. One of the reasons that people do this is because they're so eager to reach their opponent and they want to land their punch that they let their head and their center of gravity come too far forward. So that's why it wants to take a bigger step, right? Like I said, they really want to reach their opponent, and so they overcommit. And this leaves their second foot, right? It leaves their momentum coming too far forward. And so that back foot takes a bigger step, they lose their base, and it can be a problem because they can't follow up with anything else after. And so you need to control your momentum, your center of gravity, when you step, and make sure that both feet step around the same distance, which will allow you to move in any direction after you punch. So instead of coming too far forward, right, you want to make sure that you kind of keep your weight back so that after I go forward, I can move back, right, if I need to, right? Because what will happen is once you put too much weight on your front foot, right, my momentum is kind of coming forward, and then I have to come even more forward, right? You want to be able to go forward and go back. Go forward and go back if you need to. Go forward, go right. Go forward, go left, right? If you put too much weight onto that front foot and that back foot takes too big of a step, you're compromised. You can't move in any direction that you need to move when you need to move there. And so, again, guys, you want to make sure that you end up in position, right, after you throw your jab. So you want to step the same distance with both feet. Again, you don't want to let your feet come too far forward, right, like this. You want to make sure that your weight stays back so that after you jab, you can move in any direction after. Okay, this has to do with your controlling your momentum and your center of gravity. One of the problems, and another reason why I think people do this, is because they're not putting enough focus into the rotational aspect of the punch, right? They're not focusing on putting power through the rotational axis, right? They're just worried about trying to push into the punch, right? So they want to use this pushing force forward to put power into the punch, but they're failing to realize that the power, a lot of it, is going to come from this rotational twist. The power is not coming from pushing into the punch, pushing forward. A lot of it is going to come from this twist. So you want to keep your weight back, right, and let that rotational power do the work. It's a kinetic chain of energy, guys, starting from the ground, traveling up through your legs, into your hips and your shoulders, right? And your arm is just extending straight forward, right? But it's a chain of energy that's built up. So keep that in mind as you're throwing your jab. As you're stepping into your punch, you need to keep in mind the kinetic chain of energy that's going to help produce force. You don't want to let your head, which is your center of gravity, come too far forward, right? You need to control your momentum. To review everything, guys, here we are in our heel-toe stance with a solid base. Shoulders are at 45 degrees and on a slight uphill trajectory. Hands right here under our cheekbones, elbows sucked. As we step and twist into our punch, we're going to end up in the same position. We're going to be throwing our punch nice and efficiently, turning it over and protecting our chin behind our shoulder. We're going to be controlling our momentum so that when we reset, we're able to move in any direction if we choose to do so. Here we are, right? The mistakes that you want to avoid, again, are failing to twist, right? So stepping forward without the twist. You want to avoid stepping out of position, right? Like this, or like this. You want to avoid doing micro movements that telegraph and slow down the punch, right? Like this. Or flaring your elbow up, like this, okay? Throw it efficiently, nice and straight. And you want to avoid overcommitting to the punch, right? Ending up out of position and forgetting to realize that the power is coming from the kinetic chain not from pushing too far forward and overcommitting. Now I want to get into the ways that you can improve your jab through systematic drilling, whether you're on your own, whether you have a heavy bag or a partner, right? I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways that you can improve the jab.